Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cut and Splice. And today we're going to be discussing 1981 film Gallipoli. This is an Australian film directed by Peter Weir, who also made The Truman Show, Dead Poets Society, and a few other notable epics. This is one of those rare World War I epics that turned out to be, at least as far as I'm concerned, fairly successful. It follows the story of two young men, Archie and Frank, uh, who come from different parts of Australia, and pretty much the only thing that they have in common is that they're both fast. They're both really strong runners, and that's where they first meet is uh, in a sprinting competition, and then the two of them end up joining the Australian military and going off to fight in the First World War in a journey that eventually leads them to the namesake of the film, Gallipoli, which is in southern Turkey. So I guess I'll just start off by saying that there are a few reasons why this movie popped into my head as something that would be relevant to talk about. Um, One of which is, Peter Weir has a lot of films that people hold in very, very high regard, and rightfully so. And this is one that I keep bringing up that not only most people seem to have not seen, but also a lot of people haven't even heard of. And just as a personal thing for me, I've always been, at least for most of my adult life, I've been deeply fascinated by World War One, and after the 1940s, Hollywood kind of mostly forgot that World War One even happened. Uh, we tend to focus on World War Two, and I mean there are a lot of good reasons for that. But this is just a movie that always stuck with me as something that was beautifully shot, well crafted, well constructed, brilliantly acted, and yes, it's a young Mel Gibson. It was before he went nuts, uh, and and just
He
something
was
that
always nuts.
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been trying to introduce people to for quite a while, and I think that this is a good way to do it.
I was interested in seeing it. It's a movie that I heard about, like an early Mel Gibson, Peter Weir movie, but I never took the leap to actually sit down and watch it. So I'm glad you pushed us to watch it. It didn't disappoint. It was definitely it had an angle. It was interesting. It seems like it's definitely him sort of figuring out his craft. Same with Mel Gibson as far as his charisma and acting ability and the way he fills the screen. So it's a good early movie for both of them to see where they've gone, like how their careers have, you know, how far they've gone since then. It's definitely is a good origin movie if you want to see early Peter Weir, Mel Gibson. That was basically the way I came into it and the way I came out of it. My overall impression is it's a bit mixed. It's especially it's basically an anti-war movie, very much in the Paths of Glory type of vein. Paths of Glory
Yeah,
was World War One,
yeah, same
and
same more.
yeah, and those are like it's a good companion piece. I feel like in a way, almost a double feature of that would be interesting because it's they're very similar ideas, but approached from a different angle and exploring different themes throughout. So yeah, I was happy about seeing it. That was my overall reaction.
I had never seen the movie before. I knew of its existence. I don't really know how. I'm sure in the last 15 years I've looked at Mel Gibson's filmography on IMDb or something like that, and obviously heard about the movie in various ways, but never really even took the time to watch it or tried to find some way to see it or anything like that. So I was pretty glad that you recommended it and talked about it. So yeah, you definitely seemed like you really wanted to do this one. It's a good movie. I think just a point of clarification, Matt, I think that you're wrong that technically Mel Gibson did go mad the year just before this. So
good deal.
Yeah.
The year before Gallipoli?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. That was a year before I was born.
Yeah.
It's good to know that my entire life there was a crazy Mel Gibson unleashed on the world.
No, I don't. I'm just joking. I don't mean to say that he was actually crazy yet.
Crazy family. No, but it's all relative, of course. It's not crazy, just like opinionated. Everybody's opinionated. So.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen the film in a few years, and one thing that I do have to always bring up, I mean, almost as a precaution, despite obviously highly recommending the movie, is that it is an 80s movie, and yes, even though the movie's set in 1915, the movie was made in 1981, and so that means that the original musical score needed to have laser sounds in it.
That moment when that piece came in, it caught my attention, and I kind of was like, oh wow, and I definitely didn't expect it, and I didn't mind it. I really I thought it was a very odd choice by today's standards, of course, but it really brought that moment out of the rest of the movie, and really caught my attention and really set the tone for how frantic that scene was.
Yeah, I was forgiven as well because to me, it just reminded me of Chariots of Fire.
Oh yeah,
That famous score that's very 80s,
And very much
almost
about running.
and very much about running too. So I forgave it, but I agree that being that it's a World War One movie and all that, unfortunately, forever and ever, the 80s movies are going to be plagued by this fad of electronic music. Blade Runner, I think, even though Blade Runner was like 70s, right? But I feel like that one's also a bit plagued by that. Was it 70s?
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think.
think Blade Runner was 80s.
Yeah. Blade Runner was in the 80s.
Oh, so I'm not wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think that one's also plagued. It's better music than the most common 80s music. Yeah, it was 82. So yeah, no, it's unfortunately it's not only a Bourne movie, it also has so music.
Wow.
But a lot of people really like the music, the Bangles or whatever the band's name who made the music is like the Who. So yeah, no, it's okay music. It's not bad. It's just not great. But it's better than Gallipoli.
Yeah,
Compliment.
yeah, yeah. I'm putting that out there almost as a joke, but it is just one of those things where 40 years have passed, and it's just the times have changed when it comes to music. But you brought up Paths of Glory, and I actually kind of think that trying to keep myself on task here, I would actually probably argue for watching Gallipoli first and Paths of Glory second, because if you're going to do a double feature, I mean, I'm not saying that because Gallipoli is a better movie at all. I'm just saying that it's kind of it would just kind of be an interesting dynamic to see Gallipoli, which is really about the journey that gets you to the battle, whereas
Yeah. I
Paths
concur.
of Glory, Paths of Glory, it's the battle first and then the aftermath.
Yeah, I think if you were to do a double feature, which is an odd thing to be talking about, but you would start there, and then it'd be the slow burn building up to the big climax of Gallipoli, and then you'd start Paths of Glory, which starts with a decent amount of action. Or I wouldn't say starts with, but the action is more on the front of the movie because it's the courtroom drama, and it's such an exciting ending of that courtroom drama.
Yeah, which I guess partially why they have different overall themes, because they basically deal with different phases of the same concept or situation, warlike situation, and maybe that was intentional too, because obviously Peter Weir knew Paths of Glory was one of the best anti-war movies ever made. So if you're gonna make another one that's with a very similar dilemma, then you would approach it from a different angle.
Yeah, I mean, Gallipoli goes for a more like Matt said. It's all about the people, so it's like a more up close, intimate look at the people, and then therefore you're like right there with them in the midst of the horror. And then whereas like Paths of Glory, you get to step back and analyze just how horrific the situation is.
And one thing about Gallipoli that I really that I've really appreciated more and more, especially since I've read a few books about World War One, familiarized myself with how the war was actually fought. Is that first of all, kind of an amazing thing. Gallipoli is rated PG.
Yeah,
It
I
doesn't
just
feel
saw
like,
that tonight.
yeah, it doesn't feel like a PG rated movie, and especially because
Dick.
you do get that sense of people being sent into a meat grinder. And when you look back on it, it wasn't gory, it didn't rely on people's intestines hanging out or anything like that.
But if Mel Gibson remade it, it would.
Oh yeah, but
and I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Yeah. When I saw that PG rating, I thought my brain went to exactly what you just said right now. I was like, I started replaying the battle scene in my head, and I was like, yeah, there's not a lot of like bodies ripped open or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then I thought about Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
Well, it was an earlier movie, and I guess Hacksaw Ridge was more graphic. I don't remember it being as bad as some other Mel Gibson stuff, but it's
No. But there's that battle is a huge part of the movie, and it gets there's some pretty gross stuff in it. There's like a scene with like maggots in a body, and there's like a lot of limbs being blown off and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's not quite Braveheart battles or anything like that.
Yeah, if anything, it was pretty tame with Braveheart, or compared to like Passion of the Christ and whatchamacallit, the Apocalypto.
Yeah. But like Matt said, PG, surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you could get a PG rating on a movie nowadays that even showed guys going into a whorehouse.
Yeah, that's true.
Let alone the wang that you get. There's like a lot of people swimming naked in this movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're slowly dipping into, I guess, the themes of it and everything. So should we this one might be interesting to place it in his filmography, if most of us have seen some of his other movies. As well as rating it as well. Yeah, like Peter Weir. Like if you would like place this in like a top 5, or if it might be out of his like top 5. We have stuff like we have.
Look real quick. I can't remember everything else he's.
Yeah, because we have Witness is when he really, I guess, spread his wing, or at least as far as like it's the one that they made a big fuss about in film school.
Yeah.
And Dead Poet Society is a favorite. The Truman Show, Master.
I still haven't seen The Way Back.
Yeah, The Way Back is also a good candidate to maybe
In Master and Commander.
yeah.
I didn't realize. I just realized right now that The Way Back is the last movie that he's directed, and that
Yeah.
was in 2010. And for listeners, no, it is not the Ben Affleck movie.
Yeah.
Different movie. But
And it's
let's
also
see.
not the way back.
Yeah.
I definitely. I mean, if I ranked Peter Weir's movies, I would probably put Dead Poet Society first, just because I have a very warm place in my heart for it when I was younger and I watched it from a sentimental almost point of view. and and it's tough. Master and Commander is a really good movie, but I really like The Truman Show. I'm not one of those people that hates it, but I agree that it might be. I think we've mentioned at an earlier point that it's a bit overrated with some. Um, if I have to say pure cinema, like just pure solid filmmaking, I might put Master and Commander second, and then The Truman Show. I saw Fearless, but Fearless was not extraordinary, and I honestly am not a fan of Witness. So yeah, it would be like a tie almost for me. Like Witness, Gallipoli, and The Way Back would basically be a three-way tie for fifth place. But it's funny because I love his movies, but it is funny how you go back and you look at like someone's filmography. It's like, oh, I guess he didn't make that many movies that I like, but the few that he did, I really really like. Like the Master and Commander and Dead Poet Society are some of my favorite movies. So it's funny how all you have to do is make like a two three really good movies and
For me, I have not seen The Way Back, and nor have I seen Fearless or The Year of Living Dangerously, which I really want to see now that I've seen Gallipoli. I would say that while I really like Witness, I think Gallipoli was better. I own The Mosquito Coast. I have never watched it because of technical difficulties. I have it on Laserdisc, and my Laserdisc player broke, so I can't watch it. But I've heard bad things about that movie anyway, so it's probably not one that I would say is better than this one. I I thought Green Card was okay. Dead Poet Society is really good, and I like Truman Show. I just don't think I like it as much as the rest of the world. I think I'd say I'd Master and Commander maybe first, and then follow very very closely by Gallipoli, and Dead Poet Society, probably about evenly as number two, and then I guess Witness, Truman Show, or Truman Show, Witness, either way, and then Green Card.
Um, I think my list is going to be fairly significantly shuffled from yours. Honestly, I really love Master and Commander. Like, really love it. I mean, it doesn't hurt that I actually worked with an actor who was in the movie. But
Oh, you're talking about the guy from the Steven Seagal movie?
yeah.
Oh,
but
so
I mean,
we worked with the guy that was no.
yeah.
He's in
But
that movie
yeah,
for like 10 seconds or something, isn't he?
yeah. But no, I mean, I really love Master and Commander, and I think it's a movie that really flew under the radar, that didn't get the respect that it deserved. It's Even though it's a fictional story, it's really oozing with history. So I mean, I think Master and Commander is probably my favorite of his films, and then it's probably Gallipoli, and then The Way Back, and then The Truman Show, and then Witness, and then way after that is Dead Poets.
Wow.
I know that I'm going to get flack the moment that this comes out. I really liked Dead Poets when I was a kid. It just has so many great moments. A few great performances. Obviously, Robin Williams. And then I got older, and I kept looking, huh?
Nothing. Continue. Sorry.
And I kept looking at it and thinking, this is a teacher of basically a humanities teacher, and he doesn't get Robert Frost. He doesn't actually understand the poem. I mean, it takes this whole angle when it comes to like poetry. It's just like, well, it's whatever whatever you think it means that kind of approach to literary criticism. And it just kind of, it's like a dramatic version of the tale of Scrody McBookerballs or something. It just bothers me. But yeah, I would put Gallipoli, I think, number 2 on my list of Peter Weir films.
But it seems like you're pretty similar then to Jason, because you also said Master and Commander and Gallipoli.
I'd say that,
right?
yeah, that our lists were similar, except that I just put Dead Poets much higher than he did.
Yeah, I put it way higher than both of you. So yeah, no, and I agree. I had like a love-hate relationship with the Dead Poet Society when, especially in film school. I remember I did this whole presentation about it in script analysis or something, and I was trying to talk about all the good things about it, but then the flaws that it had, and then the criticism I got from what's his face, Andrew, his name?
Yeah, Kessler.
Kessler. And he was like, but you didn't give any evidence for your, for the flaws. Like you didn't name the flaws. And it was, and over the years I realized, you know what, that's true. I don't really see the flaws. I know that obviously it's a very preachy movie, and it's all about the moments, and it's all about the poetry, and that overshadows the storyline as well, which is a bit cheesy as far as what happens with the characters there and everything. But ultimately, all I can remember watching it, whenever I watched it at any age, is that it was very impactful, much like Master and Commander, just not as purely cinematic of an impact, but not as raw as Master and Commander. But it was just, I guess, in a way like the Truman Show too. The Truman Show I also felt like was, maybe that's why Jason has issues with it. It's a bit too cute. It's a bit too much like, oh, this is the world, and he's in this world, and he doesn't know what's going on, and we're gonna teach you all about how your world can really be a fantasy created by your surroundings. And it was a bit too much.
I
Not
think
on the
with the
nose.
Truman Show, I really liked it. I didn't see it in theaters, and a whole bunch of my friends were like really into it, and I was kind of like, I think I just had high expectations because I mean, like you guys, I love Jim Carrey and stuff. It's just like, I think I just kind of built it up too much or something.
Yeah, no, it's possible, and it's basically just like Dead Poet Society. It just works. It just flies. It's a movie that you watch, and moment to moment, it just really is impactful. And yeah, and if you watch it and it's too cute or it's too on the nose or whatever it is, then it turns you off. But I guess for some reason, whether it's Jim Carrey, whether it's Peter Weir, both those movies don't rub me the wrong way. So I just like them quite a bit. But I guess we all agree that Master and Commander is a stellar movie. It's definitely as a pure cinematic experience. It's definitely his best.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's funny. Well, I don't want to get too far off of Gallipoli, but I know Matt's always talking about how like something about Master and Commander like would have like historically been about them up against the American ships, right? Not the British or something like that.
Well, yeah,
Or not the French.
It wouldn't have been a French ship. The ship that the ship that they modeled, that the French ship off of was actually an American ship in real life.
I almost feel like if they'd had the balls to do that, I almost feel like the movie might have been better.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Weir talked about it at one point and just kind of said, like, yeah, you got to get money to make the movie, and American studios don't really like the idea of the Americans being the bad guys. So, at least they didn't 11 years ago, or actually 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago now. But yeah,
getting back to Gallipoli, I was going to just mention that I really liked. I guess it's probably just been a while, like quite a while, since I've seen a real like epic movie. You know, like a movie that's this. I've probably seen movies that were this long, but you know, a movie that spans a bunch of time, and you know, like with a movie like this, you've got these scenes. The pace it's going at, you know, I mean, you introduce what's not Frank, what's the other character's name?
Archie.
Thank you, Archie. And you see his family situation, and you see that he's a runner, and the uncle guy or whatever, who's kind of like kind of a father figure to him, even though he has a father. And you know, you see all these aspects of him, and he's really well developed and everything. And it's like a long time before you even get to, you know, Mel Gibson. And then all of that stuff happens, and then it's like you feel like the movie's about to get going, and then they have this whole bonding experience where they almost die in the desert. You know, it's like this really long sequence. You know, and
they had a mini The Way Back, pretty much.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's just I guess what I'm getting at is like all of those things. Once they even get to the point where they're in the military, they by the way, they have more obstacles to even get into the military. Then once they're in, there's the whole story of where it's more focused on Mel Gibson and his buddies, and them just screwing around on their leave time, you know, in like Egypt, I guess, or something. And it's like I guess it had been a while since I'd been able to appreciate a movie that, you know, when you have an epic movie like this and you're just you're gonna make a movie that's this long and this in depth, you just get, there's a lot of positive and negative things about it, but it's a different flavor altogether, you know. And I just don't think I'd seen a movie, you know, in a while, probably a year or so, that really dove that deep in. Well, I guess maybe about 3 months ago or something, I watched The Sand Pebbles. That was like the last time I saw something that was like that was even comparable in that sense. But yeah, I feel like it's so much of the journey adds to the effect at the end of the movie.
Yeah, there was a lot packed into an hour and 50 minutes. And it doesn't, it's one of those things where it is kind of hard to really unpack, you know, how the runtime feels, because you feel like it was probably 2.5 hours, but it doesn't feel like a slow movie. It doesn't, you know, it's not one of those things where it's like a slow, prodding, methodical film.
You're not trudging through the swamp, yeah.
Right. I mean, the movie moves really well. And it's just one of those things where, you know, I mean, I think just because of the scope of it, and because you're not only going on this journey throughout Australia, but, you know, you're following these people all the way from Australia to Turkey, it doesn't feel like a movie that's only an hour and 50 minutes. And it's not to say that it's slow, it's just to say that there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
But also it's not rushed. I mean, especially, you know, during that sequence that you were talking about, where they were out in the middle of the Australian desert and almost died. I mean, they took the time. They took their time with that. You know, like they were not rushing that. You got the feel that, you know, these guys have been walking for a really, really long time. So, yeah, I thought that was fairly well executed.
I love the donkey scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would comment about that is I did check out a bit. There was I think the beginning was very strong. Their lives before, but maybe that's a testament to the relationship that they've created there, like the friendship. But I felt like the beginning and the end was pretty strong, but the middle, when they go their own ways in the army was a bit. I don't know why, but I checked out a bit. Like it was just not as captivating. But I know that that midway point was there for a reason. Like that there was a reason for that, and maybe we can get into that. Maybe we can switch on to the
Yeah.
spoiler thing. But it's funny because I'm debating the ratings as we speak because I gave it one rating as I watched it, and then I'm starting to watch like my ratings for the Truman Show and for for Master and Commander. Is am I feeling this right? Because there's a lot of things I did like about it, and we can get into it in the second half. But I don't know why it wasn't a complete home run for me personally. Like but I totally get the value of the movie and what it was going for. And I think that halfway point was what was a bit lacking for me, even though it was on purpose. So that's at least my impression as far as pacing is concerned. But as far as recommending it, like you said, it's a fairly short runtime, especially compared to most modern movies. So it's worth being patient with it because I think it does pay off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you guys feel about as far as the rating it?
I probably should have thought about that ahead of time before we did this.
I mean, I personally, when I watched it, because of the pacing issue that I had, I felt like I wanted to get close to an 8, but I felt like it was more of a 7. I can go either way with it. I would almost give it 8 for what it was going for and for the themes, but some of the pacing issue, it drops it for me like to like a 7.5. But again, that's not saying that it's average or I wouldn't recommend it. It's just that it's might not be for everybody. You do need to be the type of person that's into reading more into movies and exploring themes, or if you're like a war buff, if you like to watch war movies, for sure this is the movie for you. But a random person that is not a movie fan, they might get bored with this one halfway through. So that's like as far as recommending it. But yeah, that was my impression, and I think I'm sticking to it based on my other ratings. Like it makes sense as far as where I ranked it in this filmography.
I'd probably give it a real solid 8. I mean, like Gil was saying, it's I think there's a lot of people who just don't like older movies, so I mean it's clearly not going to be for everybody, but it's really good, pretty solid movie, and pretty successful in conveying what it's trying to say and everything. So it's probably right around where I'd put it.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of remembered the movie in a way that I would probably have if I were just talking about it completely from memory, not having seen it in several years. I probably would have put it at like a 7.5 a few years ago. Now it's easily an 8.5 for me. It really jumped out upon rewatch, and to admit to this, I might lose some bro cred, but I was bawling at the end of it. I knew
Yeah.
I knew how it was going to end, and I'm still just watching it and crying. But yeah.
Yeah, all the bro cred that's gonna be missed there.
I don't know if I have any bro cred to lose, but yeah.
So
Yeah,
you guys want to talk about the what happens in the movie in the
I will say, I just have to say, in case it's of any interest, is I was looking at the ratings of the rest of his movies. It's just fun to do that, and this is actually pretty consistent. I think all our ratings are pretty consistent with what we said, because I think I gave like Dead Poet Society a 10.
Wow.
It's obviously an old rating. And The
Wow.
Truman Show I gave an 8. And I gave Master and Commander a 9. And Witness I gave a 6. And I gave a 7 to The Way Back. So that all pretty much aligns. So pretty much The Way Back and Gallipoli, I guess it's is more of a tie for me. But yeah, I guess now we can get into it. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Matt, what was your like as far as like the things that impacted you because you were talking about your reaction in the end. What was the things that took you there to that place?
well, I mean, there's a lot of it. I mean, first of all, um, I mean, the performances between the two lead actors are just really strong, and those characters are so well written. And the fact that they kind of start off on the wrong foot, almost quite literally, with Mel
Yeah.
Gibson. But with Mel Gibson barely losing that race to Archie, and Mel Gibson basically putting his entire life savings in on a bet on himself to win, and so like he's screwed, and they just end up figuring out how to. I mean, like there's that transition where they're just learning how to even be in the same room with each other to being friends, and they're still at odds with each other. Archie being the idealistic younger kid who really wants to join the war effort. He feels like it's his patriotic duty to do it, whereas
Yeah. There's no doubt that Archie is the Luke Skywalker, while Mel Gibson is
yeah,
he's the Han Solo for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Very
And
apt comparison.
I
yeah,
thought so.
and there's you can also draw a lot of parallels in the character dynamics and the two main characters in 1917 in that
Sure.
regard. Only I think that Gallipoli managed to really show that friendship a lot more
Well,
elegantly and
they were
closely.
able to give it more time, obviously.
Yeah, they were able to really suss the whole thing out, and we already mentioned that there's a period where they go their separate ways after they join the army, and the reason for that is Archie is a skilled rider, so he was able to join the Light Horse, which was like their cavalry, whereas Mel Gibson couldn't even get his horse to move, so they threw him into the infantry. And so it wasn't later
Which is
on,
exactly what he was trying to avoid.
right? It wasn't until later on that during like war games that they reacquaint with one another. And this whole thing culminates into this final battle. At Gallipoli, and one thing that I stuck out to me, especially upon rewatch of Gallipoli, that you don't often get with World War One movies. Well, you don't really get it very often with movies. Is just showing absolute futility. People just charging into bullets and making it like maybe a couple of yards, and then they're and then they're done. Like 1917 was so built around movement, so built around the characters advancing over miles of terrain during the course of the movie. Even a movie like War Horse, there's so much of a journey involved while in combat. And the reality of World War One was, and one of the reasons why World War One is so seldomly actually shown on film is because it was like attrition. It was just people sitting around and being bored for months on end, until they finally hear the whistle to go over the edge, and then they get shot down by a bunch of machine guns. It was one of those real horror stories of futility, and this is one of the few movies that I'm aware of that covered World War One that really captured that when everything finally culminated at the end, and you're actually watching what these people got themselves into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess also the whole Dunkirk situation was also the futility of. Oh wait, that was World War II.
Yeah, that was
Never
World
mind.
War II.
Yep,
But,
never mind. I'll delete that. I don't know why I thought that was like that's so weird. What other ones? Yeah, it is. I was mostly just trying to think as you were talking about the whole gap that you mentioned about like the World War One movies. I
Well,
guess
okay,
it.
so there's just off the top of our heads here. What did Matt just mention? There's Gallipoli. There's 1917.
Absolutely.
There's War Horse.
Wars.
Paths of Glory, right?
yeah,
How many do we just say? Is that 4 or 5?
I think that's 4. All Quiet on the Western Front, obviously.
Sure.
Obviously, I didn't see it, but obviously.
The Big Parade.
I didn't see that one.
Did I see it?
King Vidor. It was a silent film.
I've definitely not seen that one. Then
It's good.
I believe you. I don't think I've seen any silent World War One films or even silent war films for that matter.
I mean, before World War II, there were quite a few World War One movies.
I'm sure
But it's just one of those things where, again, a lot of it was in the silent era, and then what was that? What was the Howard Hughes movie?
Howard Hughes movie.
The Wind
Which
of
one? Oh yeah.
The movie that Howard Hughes directed. Hell's Angels.
Hell's Angels. That's the one with the planes and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember it from The Aviator. I'm talking about or something. Hell's Angels.
Watching that movie made me want to see the other movie. There's a movie called Death Watch that's not particularly very good, but it's like a World War One trench warfare horror film.
Yeah, that actually seems to be a common thing that I've seen, that a lot of movies set in World War One have become like horror movies where like the barbed wire is coming to life and violently like killing people or something.
I think there's a little bit of that in this one. I don't remember much of it. I just remember it's like Jamie Bell and Andy Serkis or something like that. And
that's the one.
it was an interesting movie, but it wasn't. I don't think I'd ever watch it again. Probably.
Red Badge of Courage. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where, I'm not saying that there's a complete dearth of World War.
But I mean, if the fact that we can't name any more than this, I mean, that's all pretty telling, right? I mean,
Oh, but wait, like, but the Americans, the Americans participated in World War One.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
so yeah, because I'm trying to think if that was the reason why.
No.
It's like
the Doughboys. We got in pretty late, but we were definitely involved.
That's our thing with World Wars.
Yeah.
Coming in late. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a party. You don't want to show up too early.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. I wonder what that is. Whether it's the stories, there's more documentation of World War II, or
if I had to guess, I'd say it has to do with 2 or 3 factors. Number one, just the fact that I think it's pretty safe to say that in terms of historical events, World War II shaped more of the last century than pretty much anything else, I think. at least in terms of if we're going to compare wars. And then the other thing I think is just that as, movie making technology changed over time and everything, it would just, I think that World War II is more fresh in people's minds and perhaps even easier to make certain things, stories about. Like if you think about like The Longest Day, it's like huge undertaking of a movie, right? But like if you think about it, like there's that whole story about how like a lot of the people that they have in those scenes were like the actual soldiers that did some of those scenes, some of the things that they're depicting. I mean, the movie was made like what 10 years after the actual event or something, maybe 15 years. So it's like, certain things like that, little things like that and big things like that, make certain stuff like that easier. I mean, the trenches aren't there anymore. The trenches in France, like you got to remake all of that stuff when you're making a movie about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a couple of things that hold World War I movies back, that I can think of as key factors, at least compared to World War II. And one of them is the Germans weren't Nazis in World War I. Yeah, I mean,
that's a big part. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
there just wasn't that clear. Okay, there are good guys and there are bad guys. Let's let's just go, kill these Nazis, who are murdering Jews and so on and so forth. I mean, obviously, we didn't even know that they were murdering Jews until like 1944.
I think we were all well aware of the world domination idea, though.
But yeah, there are a lot more political complexities that went into World War I, that. And an odd criticism that particularly the Red Guardian decided to come out with, with 1917 is, oh well, they just showed the Germans as these shadowy figures and like this bad guys and so on and so forth, and it was a lot more complex than that. And it's like, well, come on, they're telling the story of two British soldiers, they don't care about the politics. They care about surviving. But it is true that there's just a lot more to it than World War II in that regard. But again, it's just one of those things where it's just harder to film the combat in a way that's both historically accurate and cinematically interesting. Like it or not, a lot of the reason why people go to see war movies is they like to see the battle scenes. And the battle scenes are a lot more compelling if you actually are seeing progress being made and areas of land being taken. And you just think about, a book that I've been reading, a few books that I've been reading about the Battle of the Somme, which a World War I battle that took place in northern France. I mean, the first day of the battle was the meat grinder to end all meat grinders, in which 20,000 men just on the British side died in one day. It was estimated that 3 men were being hit by a bullet every second. They're trying to advance, like they're trying to do the old school cavalry charges and everything like that, but now machine guns are a lot more common. So these people are just running out of the trenches, and they're just getting shot down like it's nothing. They're not advancing. And then that battle lasted for like another 8 months after that, and it was mostly just lobbing bombs at each other as best they could, to try to soften up the other side's defenses before doing another suicidal charge. It's one of those things that's a little bit more interesting to capture, a little bit easier to capture in an interesting way in a book than it is in a movie. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my history rant. But
Well, I guess Lawrence of Arabia is another
Oh, that's
more. Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the second dream sequence segment of the movie Sucker Punch is supposed to take place in World War One.
That's good to know. I guess I'll be aware of that when I watch it.
Oh, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. I was thinking that like it's mostly trying to like catch up on some what's his face? Zack Snyder's movies to see if I
If
like
you
any.
do watch it, watch the director's cut. It's far better, but it's still very problematic movie.
Okay, cool. But yeah, no, I guess that's why it makes perfect sense that there's Gallipoli and Paths of Glory, just talking about the trenches and how like bogged down people were, or it was just I guess it was just yeah, there wasn't much sophistication to like how do you get from one spot to the next because of the whole like machine guns just keeping everything just flattening out anything that comes their way. So what I really appreciated about it is it does try to I guess in a way like Master and Commander, it's very similar. I feel like what's going on there, like whatever the settings are, whether it's on a boat or if it's a race or going to war, whatever it is, what it feels like is that these two kids are, which is funny to see Mel Gibson because he's totally in my mind, he's not a kid. But so it's funny to see him so innocent and also poor. I don't know why I didn't buy it too much because it was Mel Gibson, but I mean, it was tough. It was just a movie I shouldn't watch at this point. But I got with it. But the charisma definitely. I mean, it was necessary. That helped. But yeah, it's basically two kids trying to find their way in the world, and it's the two opposites of like what happens oftentimes with young men is they either join a war or a cause, or
Mhm.
they try to, or they're very very selfish, very not even just because they're selfish, but often if they're poor, like say like Mel Gibson is in that movie, they don't want to give anybody anything. They want to take care of number one of themselves, and for them having a higher cause that they're going to go and die off, and is no way to live a life because you're not going to have a life. So it's basically bringing those two approaches and creating a friendship. I guess a friendship that's an unlikely friendship, and then they get separated, and you see how Mel Gibson makes new friends. That was the whole halfway point that I didn't really connect with, but it was necessary because it was only to show that there's other of these young kids in the world who end up going for this war just because it was something to do, it was something to give them purpose. Which is also there's similarities here between this and Full Metal Jacket too. It's this whole
Yeah.
notion of these are basically kids. There's also the whole thing in the beginning about him being 15, but he wants to pass as a 18 or something. So it's they're basically he was trying to really emphasize the part about like these are kids. They haven't lived a life. They're barely out of school. They don't have families, and they're going off to this war that, as we know, I mean, it's basically almost a sure it's essentially a suicide mission. Very few of them are going to come back, and just how sad that is, how disposable they are, and and then he gives it significance because of the friendship. Because ultimately, what really matters, like, is what matters in life is to have purpose, to go to a war to die, or really everything that matters in life is friendship. It's the connections that we make as we go through life. And even if the connections that Mel Gibson makes in the halfway point of the movie with his unit, the infantry unit, he still has a blast. he has a good time. He misses his friend, his good friend, but he's having a good time because he's making more human connections. And it's so sad that this is all in the shadow of this war that's essentially going to be the death of most of these kids. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what the movie is trying to do is just say like life is beautiful. You get to connect with other humans. You get to have these friendships. You get to see these interesting places. They go, I guess they're like in Cairo or something there.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's so sad that it's in the shadow of death. It's in the shadow of war, of something that's gonna kill you prematurely, and that's why the ending is so tragic. And I got all that. I was like, oh, this is great. If the pacing was slightly better, if I don't know, if Peter Weir was like a more like seasoned, if he had made the same movie with the same chops he had with Master and Commander, I don't know. I feel like it would have been like a classic. Like it would have been like a great movie. But it was there. The intention was there. The themes were there. It's just for some reason it didn't click all the way in. But it was a very admirable attempt to tell a story about that, and and that's why I ultimately like it, but I have to acknowledge those flaws, and maybe that's why it's kind of flew off the radar, and that's why it's, even though he's a fairly well-known director, I don't know, like you don't see this movie come up very often in most people's talking about like famous war movies or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that's the reason.
Yeah. I don't know. I really liked it. I do definitely see what Gil's talking about. I think it's funny that I've seen, I obviously saw 1917 a couple years ago when that came out or whatever, and the endings are so similar in one aspect, at least, with the runner trying to get the message to the commanding officer and everything. And I I'll just say that it was very effective for me because I was watching this towards the end thinking like, holy crap, like which way is this going to go? Like I know that a lot of people died there and everything historically, but what kind of an ending is this going to have, kind of thing. I didn't expect. I mean, I kind of expected either everyone to just die and then to be making some sort of point. I kind of figured that was where it was going, and then there's that moment of hope when the guy,
the general. Or,
not the general, the one who they actually kind of develop. They show his wife and everything. He's there at the
oh
end.
yeah,
The chubby guy. He says like, "I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this anymore." And he gets Mel Gibson and he's like, "Go get a message to the guy. Tell him we're not going. This is ridiculous. I'm not sending any more men." And there's like this ray of hope, and he runs and tells the guy, and he's like, the terrible guy says, like, nah, nah, just keep going, and that's when that that music score you're talking about kicks in with the techno music and everything, or the little electronica or whatever you want to call it. In that moment, I was like, oh shit, like he's going over his head. Like maybe Mel Gibson is gonna save the day. Like I really thought, like, I mean, yeah, a lot of people have died and it's a tragedy, but they could have like a really 1917 kind of ending. That's like exactly what I was thinking in my head, was like he's gonna be this like last second thing, and it's like super tragic. And it's I think that it did really really affected me. I was just like, holy crap, oh, it's like tough, you know.
yeah. Uh, and incidentally, something that Gil kind of alluded to that I think is worth bringing up, that the movie did bring up too, is the movie is focused on the Australian soldiers, and that was a huge component of that last battle sequence where it's just like they're acknowledging that the British are basically just using the Australians as cannon fodder.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like so being treated completely as second-class citizens to just go, go try to clog up their guns or something, um, but yeah, uh, that last sequence, uh, and the funny thing is, it might have actually hit me harder this time around because I knew what was going to happen, and rather than it being like this moment of hope and then a sudden sinking of, oh shit, he didn't make it. uh, we're in the spoiler section. We're allowed to. And the moment that whistle blows and you see Mel Gibson's reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, really good just moment of acting by Mel Gibson there.
Yeah.
It's like the world is just crashing down. And, it is one of those things where no matter how much I think, like, intellectually and just philosophically, when I look at movies, I do my best to try to nitpick every step of the movie, every step of the way. And, if there is a dip in the middle of the movie, I try my best to keep that in mind. But it's just one of those things where if you have an ending that's that strong, a lot of the flaws just kind of go out the window in my mind. I actually have to admit that. But anyway.
Yeah, no, it's that's why I feel like that's why I said I admired like what it was going for, and the ending, and the ending on a still frame also is pretty classy.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's funny because apparently some of the I don't know if it was later posters, but they basically took the image, the frozen image in the end, and they made it the poster, which
Yeah.
What?
they made it ambiguous enough in the poster. It's they mess with it a bit, so it's mostly like black and white contrasty, and so you don't it barely
Oh,
looks like a person. But it is funny that they use that image as on the cover. But I think if you haven't seen the movie, you have no idea what that image is. But it is kind of amusing that they essentially put the last frame of the
I
movie
see it now. Yeah. Yeah.
poster.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and one thing I was gonna say too about it is interesting about the whole using the title Gallipoli, because it is a very if nothing else, the title is also weird. Not a great title. I get it that it's the place, but it's one of the reasons why didn't it didn't scream at me to watch it. But I appreciated that there's this whole idea about Gallipoli being this place to aspire to get to because that's where the Australian front was, or like that's where the Australian army was. And the fact that, like, because you think about like the Dorothy trying to get to Oz, and there's this whole thing about people trying to, Luke trying to join the rebellion. It's Gallipoli, like it's again, it's this irony about this movie that like these kids have this romanticism of, oh, this place that we haven't heard of, but it's exotic, and there's a war going on, and we can fight, and we can die. And the reason why it's so romantic is just so misguided in a way. Oh, you want to fight for your country, but really, it's like, what's the point? Like, I mean, that's maybe that's another reason, like World War II, why that was more consequential, because, like you said, it was very, very clear that there's going to be some major disruption to world order if the Nazis were to take over Europe. So the stakes were so much higher. But with a lot of wars, you feel like it's sad that they get romanticized by men, especially young men, at that time, and after the fact too. Look, like we romanticize it now, or at least we make movies that, hopefully, like this one, it's an anti-war movie, so it's against it. But we tell so many stories about those wars, and I don't know why like wars give purpose to humans. It's a very weird psychological, and at the same time it completely demolishes this like personal psychology. Like people come back with PTSD and all that. So it's
It's
this
not just
like
war. There's I mean, I don't know, I haven't like read about this or anything. I don't have probably have like the proper terminology to talk about it, but like there's a thing in all humans, but I think that psychologists would argue that it's there's evidence that it's even stronger in men, regarding like finding purpose. I think probably because women find purpose with trying to have kids or something, but it like one of Frank Herbert's Dune books talks about it a lot. But this whole thing of like at a certain point in your life, people they try to find something to test themselves with, and it's a part of finding out who you are as a person. And for young men, historically speaking at least, that has often been war. That can be incredibly misguided and even foolish or stupid, but that's a very real thing. I mean, it's very like there's so much evidence to point to that. And if it's not going to be war, if there is no great war or something like that, then they find something else, which is one of the main reasons why you see a lot of like it's something that has been linked to like gang violence and a lot of other stuff too. It's like you seek something to define yourself often if you can't find something else to define yourself. And if you're like if it's what some people have said, like if you're stuck in the ghetto or something like that, and you're in a country like America where we're not necessarily drafting people to wars in the last couple few decades or so, the thing you might find would be to find yourself as a member of a group, and that group might be the local gang that's fighting with some other local gang, and it's often violent and it's often misguided, but it's a weird thing that we do as humans, I think.
there is the whole some people have a thing about men especially, I feel like, but also women. There's this whole thing as you get a little bit older, like middle age, that they have this thing about testing their physical prowess. They'll
Yeah,
train for a marathon, or
Oh yeah, yeah, for
they'll
sure.
do crazy races, or take on biking, or anything that's like strenuous like activity to kind of show that they're strong, or they still have it like physically. But yeah, and I
Well, if
guess
you're not feeling alive, then you want to do something to prove yourself that you're alive, right?
yeah, and the most obviously path that most people have is just chasing money. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
goal that people have, is like if you climb some sort of career ladder and try to achieve something. But yeah, I guess wars are just a very simple way when they are around to prove yourself in some ways. I think what it is, yeah, it's being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, which is why religion is also very impactful for people. But yeah, like it's I think joining an army is and fighting for your country. There's something about that that's almost like spiritual in a way for
Yeah.
humans.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a very common. What is it that people say? Testing your metal, or
Yeah.
your grit. I mean, it's almost a worn out term to say, find out what you're made of. But I mean, there's no quicker way to find out what you're made of than going to a war, and seeing how you actually respond. And Roger Ebert, I remember him talking about Saving Private Ryan, particularly in the last battle scene, just saying, realistically, most people would probably be like Corporal Upham, paralyzed with fear, hearing his fellow soldier yelling at him for ammo and not being able to get himself off the ground to go deliver the ammo. Then then you see like people like Audie Murphy, and like that's another aspect of Gallipoli, that I think really stuck out to me. And I think that Sam Mendes kind of mirrored this with 1917 with Blake and Schofield. Archie being the younger person, being the seemingly better off, better off financially. I mean, even though he was staying with his uncle, it seems like Archie had the better family life, and
He's probably doing all right.
Yeah, more, and like he didn't have to. Archie didn't have to go off to war. He wanted to, and it's again, like you said, the Luke Skywalker story. Whereas Frank is older, he's more kind of aware of the ways of the world, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the movie, the commanding officer is calling Archie over and tells him that he needs a runner, and Archie doesn't want to be the runner. He wants to go fight. And so he recommends that they make Frank the runner instead of him. That is a decision entirely in line with Archie's character.
Absolutely.
But it's also one of those things where Frank had already seen a lot of his friends coming back, either badly wounded or dead. Archie's just kind of been, in the background, up until the climax, and it's not until he's already made that decision that oh no, I don't want to be a runner, I want to fight, that he actually starts to see like the whole futility of the role that he decided to take. It is just one of those decisions that stuck out to me, especially upon rewatch. That's just like, yeah, that's precisely what a character like Archie would do. That young idealistic kid who doesn't really get what he's getting into ends up giving the safer job away to somebody else so he can go kill some bad guys.
Yeah. The only other thing I think I was going to mention is just I thought it was really effective, the scene where two whole waves have been cut down. Two whole waves of soldiers have tried to charge and been cut down before they even make it like 20, 30 feet or so. When they give the order, when the guy commanding officer says, all right, we're going to actually go. In that last moment, you see all the people around Archie are taking out their knives, and they're taking rings and wristwatches and letters to their families and stabbing them into the sand bales or the sandbags to leave them there, knowing that, I mean, like, just, they know that it's over. There's no chance for them, kind of thing.
Yeah. That was a hell of a sequence, and deeply cinematic. I mean, there's no dialogue; it's just actions, and you just get it. You just get the gravity of the situation,
and that score.
Yeah.